Imagine standing on a beach more than 50,000 years ago, looking across a huge ocean with no engines, no maps, no GPS, and no modern boats. Then, you decide to cross it. Sounds impossible, right? But ancient humans actually did something very similar. They crossed open water and eventually reached the ancient landmass of Sahul, which included Australia and New Guinea. And the strangest part is that some of these sea crossings may have been close to 100 kilometers across open water. So how did they do it? The first thing to understand is that the ocean was not always as wide as it looks today. During the Ice Age, sea levels were much lower, exposing large areas of land and creating more islands. But even then, some gaps between islands could not be crossed on foot. People had to travel by water. Scientists believe early humans may have used simple watercraft, such as rafts or other basic boats, made from materials available in their environment. We do not have the actual boats from 50,000 years ago because wood, bamboo, and other plant materials usually disappear after thousands of years. But the successful settlement of Sahul tells us that people somehow had the ability to make these difficult sea journeys. One possible strategy was island hopping. Instead of thinking, let's cross an enormous ocean, people could travel from one island to another whenever possible. From high ground, they might look for distant land, smoke, birds, floating vegetation, or other signs that land was nearby. Some routes may have allowed people to see or reach a chain of islands before making a longer crossing, but here is where the story becomes even more incredible. Eventually, some groups had to leave an island without being able to see their final destination. Imagine pushing a primitive raft away from shore, knowing that somewhere beyond the horizon there might be another land, but you cannot see it. They would have needed to understand winds, currents, weather, and the movement of the sun and stars. They may have also watched birds and other natural signs to judge where land could be. Researchers have used computer models to study these ancient routes, and some results suggest that people could increase their chances of reaching Sahul by choosing favorable departure times and making even a small amount of progress toward their destination. And they probably weren't just making one lucky trip. The evidence suggests that successful settlement required multiple voyages and enough people to establish a population. That means these ancient travelers were not simply helpless people drifting across the sea. They may have been capable of planning journeys that lasted several days. Now, imagine the danger. A storm could destroy the raft. Strong currents could push travelers far from their planned route. Food and fresh water were limited. If the group became separated, there was no way to call for help. Yet somehow, generation after generation, humans became better at living near and traveling across the sea. Thousands of years later, much more advanced ocean voyagers would travel enormous distances across the Pacific using sophisticated canoes, sails, paddles, and knowledge of stars, winds, and waves. So, the next time you look at the ocean and think of it as a barrier, remember this: for primitive humans, the ocean was not only a wall, it was also a road. With simple technology, careful observation, courage, and probably generations of experience, humans began crossing water that separated entire worlds. And perhaps the biggest mystery is not simply how they crossed the ocean, but why they were brave enough to sail toward a horizon they had never seen beyond.